welcome to the final quarantine commentary chapter. I'm Kerry Shawcross. I am the director for this episode, and I think I wrote like 2 lines, maybe.
My name is Miles Lynn. I was one of the writers on this episode.
I'm Eddy. I was another writer on this episode.
And what an episode it was. I'm glad that we got to, this was definitely one of those fights that could have gotten shorter, but I'm glad we got to get a good amount of it in there still. Just because I love seeing Neo fight.
I'm a big fan of that Oscar Kane lamp grab.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oscar's got moves, man. He's got moves.
He does have moves.
He's not just a farm boy. He's a farm man.
Yeah, he seems to be working
on
the
farm.
I don't know if I
go that far. I'm not sure I'd go that far yet.
All right, he's a farm young adult.
Yeah. Farm teen. Something I don't like that. I take that back. I'm sorry. But then here's a fight that maybe I'm slightly more excited about.
I'm such a big fan of this fight.
I mean, I think we talked about this in the chapter 12 commentary, but I mean, like, this entire fight is something that we wanted from the very beginning and made it all the way through.
It was really difficult because I was trying to figure out, like, the first pass of this fight looked very different. At one point I had Penny getting knocked into a room with a bunch of, like, oh no, she gets thrown into the hall with all the busted AKs, and then we wanted to do a thing where we could show some more, like, magical looking Maiden power stuff, and Cinder brought all the AKs back to life and made like evil magical puppets to fight Penny, and there was some sort of like puppet joke there, something like that. But it essentially turned into this thing where as I was working on it, I realized, hey, Cinder's got Maiden powers, why doesn't she just like blow up the room and like bust through walls? And then the answer was she should. So that's how we ended up outside in this awesome sky fight.
Yeah, I love that surprising moment of like going out into the open air and being able to do this, like, especially since each of them has a way of doing this kind of in an aerial battle. Worked out really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the not necessarily misdirect, but the little bit of a time there of like, what happened to Winter? Where'd she go? Nope, she can fly. We're good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw the board of that little sequence right there. It was very, It's always nice when you can like see a board and it goes like way above like what you saw in your head.
Yeah, Kevin worked on the scene and did an amazing job.
Kevin, love his work.
And I remember this was a thing when we were trying to block this out, like at least in the writing stage, it was like they're starting in the place where the thing that they need is, and then getting them out of it, and then getting Cinder back separately from them.
Yeah, it's definitely a little logistically challenging, but I think having it turned into this way to also see Penny, see her human side and see her making more human choices versus this cold logical choice.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, they went this way.
I can't remember where the idea to have Neo turn to Nora came from, but I'm very happy we did it.
That was me, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
It was we had this whole thing, because, Ren, is clearly struggling with some pretty heavy emotional stuff that isn't, we don't fully, we don't at all resolve it this volume. But we wanted it, like, I remember, like, we all knew that people weren't going to be a fan of Ren's attitude for a large portion of this volume, but something that was really important to me was still showing, like, hey, don't mistake his actions. Like, he's obviously doing a bad job of communicating and, like, talking about how he's feeling about stuff, but he still cares about Nora. And this moment right here, that Nora's the only one that kind of sees just how much that Neo playing the Nora card on him really got to him.
He's still a kid.
Yeah.
Speaking of like not resolving kind of Ren's stuff in this volume, that was something that was interesting about writing kind of this volume in general, but like with the finale being able to land everybody where we wanted them, because we knew that some people were taking kind of smaller steps in volume 7, with the full step was going to come in volume 8, and figuring out exactly where we wanted to land all those pieces in this episode was an interesting little exercise.
God, this scene also, like you said earlier, Eddy, when something comes together even better than you'd imagined. I have a very soft spot for Alzheimer's, any form of dementia. My great grandmother suffered from it in her final years. Didn't really know who I was. and so that has always really gotten me. And this was the first VO session in a long time where, like, just directing the VO, I was crying. Like, the performance just absolutely blew me away, and then seeing it on screen still gets me.
Yeah, also, like, showing the scale here of the Maiden powers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
someone's had their entire life to master it.
The effects team really knocked this out.
So good. It looks so good.
I've said it probably like 4 times in different spots on the commentary, but like Winter and Penny are like one of my favorite parts of this whole volume. Just their tying their respective storylines together and then having it all kind of culminate in this sequence.
Yeah, a very human robot and a human who's, some could argue, a bit robotic.
A very robotic human, yeah.
Yeah.
This scene always gets me talking about Ren again. Is this scene, seeing how far apart I think they've all grown, or Ren, and by that I mean Ren has pushed them away.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, then Oscar can't help but run away like he typically does.
I'm always floored by just how far Neith can go in his performance, because like a lot of us, like, not a traditionally like pro voice actor when he started.
Yeah.
And you know, most of the times he finishes his recording with us, it's like 8 p.m. our time, and then early in the morning in Japan, and he'll wrap up and he's like, all right, I'm gonna go to work. And my
he's
normal desk job,
he comes in kind of like out of breath because he's just had to run from catching like the train.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not an easy thing for him to do.
But I love, like, he's always done a great job, but I can really say he's grown a ton as a performer.
I was really happy with the scene, just how quiet and calm everything got. We really went for this like Eye of the Storm kind of vibe.
Are you okay?
Yeah, in this super chaotic, super stressful, and especially for Fria, extremely confusing moment, it really meant a lot that the first thing Penny says to her is, "Are you okay?" It's checking to see, just checking to see if she's fine. There's a million other things that are probably on her mind, but that being the most important thing, I think speaks a lot to who Penny is as a person.
Yeah, I mean, and especially with, Ironwood's influence on her and the situation, you have to ask, like, is that what Winter would have said?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It was a difficult. I remember we had a lot of talks about how does the Maiden power get transferred, because it would be like there was at one point where we were discussing, like, is Penny going to have to kill this woman? Like, was on the table at one point. And yeah, it was a weird sort of like trying to find something that would feel satisfying, but also not too convenient, and still the right amount of sad without being disturbing.
Well, we didn't want Penny to like steal it from Winter, like in like a, you know what I mean? Like, so just having everyone's motivations here and figuring out exactly the way it shook out. I remember that was one of our toughest things that we did in the outline.
Getting it so that it's okay. The pods are broken. It can't happen any other way. This is actually, there was an original version where Penny, like, one pod got broken, and Penny like used the pod to transfer it to herself because she could like remote interface because she was a robot. But then that's something about that still felt like more like stealing. And in the end, it was Fria's decision.
I also got to say, another one of my favorite characters this season is Oscar. He does not get a ton of screen time, and because he's significantly younger than the others, he's not really given. Ironwood doesn't know him quite as well. He doesn't get the Huntsman license treatment, but instead gets a lot of one-on-one time with Ironwood off screen. We see a brief bit of it in the montage, and then of course they have their conversation in the vaults earlier in the season. But like not even just in the beginning of the season, I said, man, Oscar's got moves. But he's also, like, he's matured so much in his role. And, man, I just love this small boy standing in front of a military giant and just speaking his mind.
Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, I think it says a lot about Ironwood and where he is right now. Even at this moment, he's still wanting or expecting Oz to show up. Because I still think he doesn't he believes in his idea, but I think he still wants that guidance. he's not
Yeah, I was
gonna
gonna say this scene is I think it was one of the final things that we wrote in this episode. This scene and like the upcoming sequence.
yeah.
Philosophical points that won't matter if Salem wins. Listen to me. No.
To be able to
I-
lay it out all on the table about like here's what this fundamental issue is, and to show just how far Ironwood has gone.
Yeah.
Rob, the council, this kingdom.
And you get such a sense for how, like, yes, you could probably argue that, you know, some of this is his own doing, but, like, you can tell that he feels, in his mind, he is backed into a corner and is doing the only sensible thing.
And we talked about this in chapter 11. He's not completely wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he's doing what he thinks is best, and that's the hard thing, is when you have different entities or organizations that all think that they're doing the quote-unquote right thing or the quote-unquote best thing, and there's not always a very clear way to prove who is right or who is wrong. You
Right.
could argue it all day, but it's hard sometimes to look at something that happens in life and say, like, oh, that's 100% what needed to happen.
Yeah, you're prioritizing pros and cons, and it's just subjective by nature.
Winter, on the other hand... Oh, go ahead, Eddie.
So we knew it would be divisive too. We knew that there were
Yeah.
people that were going to be firmly in different camps.
We talked about that in the episode 11 commentary. One of the things, though, that I love is Winter's ability to kind of analyze a situation and immediately make a call. Obviously, this was a moment that she's been waiting on for her entire life. Obviously, it hasn't gone the way she thought it would, but she thought she was going to get this thing that was originally decided for her, and she was going to own that. And in a split second, without her aura, without her semblance, she makes the call to buy Penny time. And, like,
Yeah.
man, Winter is so... I love Winter. She's so cool.
This whole sequence here was another example of one that in the script all the same moments happened, but it was a lot less intercut. And we just spent a lot of time in the edit trying different things out, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. Just the energy flow up to this Penny and Oscar moment was a big thing for me of getting right. I think the team knocked it out. I'm gonna keep saying knocked it out. And now he's a light bulb.
Yeah, even the placement of the Ironwood scene was a little bit later.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just kind of feeling weird to there's a lot of like starting and stopping originally that I just think it didn't feel that way in the script, but then the second we got in the animatic it was like, nah, okay.
Yeah.
And
man.
oh yeah, good.
I was just going to say, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Ozpin has entered.
Yeah.
Shannon McCormick is back, and he brings it with this monologue.
I love Shannon.
This monologue, I think I can't remember which two lines, but there's two specific lines that
I
we
think it's
said.
the very last ones.
No, it was
It was
in
like right in the middle.
It was
about
right in the middle.
friends and yeah,
It's a
somewhere.
very... Yeah, I think I tweeted about it. There was one line that we were stuck on for the majority of our day.
And it was like the day that we're delivering this script.
Yeah, it was the closest we'd really come, I think, on one of our deadlines. And yeah, man, I wish for the life of me I could remember which line it was, but it ended up being a very brief, like 2-sentence line that we were trying to make like a whole paragraph.
Yeah.
And then we realized, you know, a simpler approach was much better. And
Yeah, and then I just cut it. You'll never hear it.
It's just not even part of it. I'm a big fan of this ballad.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we like to sneak them in, and I'm a sucker for these kind of longing endings,
yeah.
where you kind of simultaneously kind of recap where everybody's at and also where they're going to be headed.
Mm-hmm. It was a rough volume for so many of our characters, and
It started so much better.
yeah, we really also love the idea of ending it on an almost identical shot to where we started.
Yeah,
That was fun.
he's fallen for a long time, huh? Don't think about it. Well, he's spread out, so it slows down.
The weirdest reaction I remember seeing to this episode was online. Someone commented, was like, "Guys, Winter looks really good with her hair down."
That was a common sentiment.
Yeah. It was like, I mean, circumstances aside.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
I'm a big fan of, I mean, obviously, like, having, like, Shnee family drama is, like, a big thing for me, but then to have them having this moment again about, like, we each have to go our own way, happening in the same place that they had this conversation in Chapter 5, but the circumstances now putting them on opposite sides, I'm really satisfied with how that all worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think as a writing team, we did a good job of, you know, having these nice, like, cyclical moments. Not cyclical, but like,
Mirrored.
yeah. I don't know. I think things turned out really well.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how Volume 7 turned out. Gosh. This feels like a lifetime ago.
I was just thinking that. I was like, oh man, I'm thinking about Volume 8 things.
And speaking of unresolved stuff, yeah, we end on this last little note between Cinder and Neo, and this look is just enough to set up, to pose a bunch of questions.
Yeah, it's you know, we knew from the start that we wanted, you know, Volume 7 and 8 to be this kind of like cohesive piece, so I think it was important to us that really, I feel like the only person ending this volume in a good place is Salem.
Yeah.
Well, and from the very beginning, that was, we knew that we wanted Volume 7, like, that was it. Like, Salem is rolling in as kind of like the final moment of the volume.
You saved me. Actually, you saved us.
That line was something that was really important for us too, was Oscar, despite not having a ton of screen time, like, is really trying to lean into, like, who he needs to be. And this idea, we didn't want Oz coming back to be like this Deus Ex Machina of like, hey, if it, you know, Oz came here and saved you. It was like, no, Oz heard what you told to James, and like that got him up off his scared little non-existent hiney.
I'm so happy with how these turned out. Everybody from modeling to animation, effects, music, like everybody.
What up, Monstra, you big chungus?
Yeah.
Big old girl.
I guess this is us publicly saying Monstra, right?
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. Spoilers.
No, it's fine.
Spoilers, Volume 8.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Oh gosh, that look though, work it.
Yeah.
Dress for the job you want, and she wants to be evil queen of the world. Boy, man, we said this really early on, but at the time of this recording, we've just done recording for Volume 7 while the team is in production on Volume 8, and we are, as a writing team, working on Volume 9. So what's interesting to me is everybody on this commentary can say, and we talked about this a little earlier, I think Volume 8 was without question the most difficult volume we've had to write, and I'm so curious as to what it's going to be like when that comes out. I think Volume 7 went really well, and I'm excited about Volume 8, but like we're not gonna know how any of this goes for a while, so I don't know. This wild ride called RWBY is just, I don't even.
It's so cool to be ahead like this, but yeah, it's definitely a change of tone for, I think, us as like creative people of you know, being able to look at stuff from like this extreme of a view.
Because yeah, a lot of times like you learn from every project that you work on. Like the next project will always be a little better in some way, and maybe you'll make a misstep here or there. Like we said earlier, there's never going to be such a thing as a perfect project. But yeah, it is strange because like a lot of times, though we don't usually let like fan reaction have a huge sway on what we're doing with the story, like this will be the first thing, like it's the only season that we've ever written entirely like in a vacuum, I guess. That's Volume 9, I suppose. Is the one
Volume 9 would be a little bit. Volume 8, there was like the season had started and we were already in writing, and it didn't sway a lot of things, but there were things that were like, okay, this is something that we had felt that people were picking up on, so like we already kind of knew that going in, and it's what's interesting looking back is how much of the end of Volume 7, because remember when we were writing chapters 11 through 13 in particular, that it was like our outline stage was like kind of chaotic about those because we knew all these
For
things
volume
needed to
7.
happen. Yeah, for volume 7. That it was so chaotic, and we knew all these things were happening and all these things, and the outline I remember was kind of not a mess, but it was like definitely like we don't know how much space any of these things are going to get to breathe when they're happening. And not to like toot, I mean, it's more about tooting the crew's horn. Like it's the work done on those final episodes. I think they're 3 of the best of the volume, and it's nice to like watch those episodes and like what felt like total chaos in the writer's room, ended up, just really, especially I remember chapter 11 felt really chaotic when we were trying to outline and feel like, okay, here's what's going on, and then 11 is such a strong episode.
It was nuts. Gosh, this was such a... It was also, I mentioned it at the top of this commentary, but Eddy, having you and Kiersey in the writer's room for the first time was like such a blast. It was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I think it was it was nice to have. It was just refreshing, honestly. Like y'all are great writers, and just having more people that can bring things to the table, and it was a good time.
Well, the thing that was super cool about working with you guys was that, like me and Kiersey both felt this kind of independently of each other, but like stepping into something where you guys had this plan, these things drawn up in this arc, and you always worry when you step into something like that, like how receptive is everyone going to be to new ideas, or is it going to be like, no, we're kind of locked into this and we just want some help, or like, but like the amount of playing ball, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, that you guys were willing to do with everything that was coming out, and like what you were willing to let us roll with was super awesome and really impressive about the whole thing.
We love you guys for watching the show and for supporting us through all these years.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for watching.
Yeah, it means the world to us. I think we say this every year, but thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, let's wait for that post-credit scene, right? No?
Go!
Bye, guys.